Good afternoon and welcome to today's briefing at the Jerusalem Press Club. I'm Talia Dekel-Fleissig. We are currently on day 9 of the 2-week ceasefire between Iran and the US and Israel, while the flare-up with Hezbollah continues. President Trump said talks with Tehran could continue in Pakistan within 2 days, while the regime has yet to comment officially. Meanwhile, historical talks between Israeli, Lebanese, and US ambassadors were held yesterday, and 30 projectiles were fired towards Israel's northern communities only hours ago. Interesting timing. Joining us today is Colonel in Reserves Miri, a senior fellow at the International Institute for Counterterrorism and its former director. Eisen served for 2 decades in the IDF, including as deputy head of the Combat Intelligence Corps. She also worked as the Prime Minister's international media advisor from the Second Lebanon War until the end of 2007, and is a frequent commentator on global media outlets. She's a founding member of Forum Dvorah, Women in Policy and National Security. Miri, welcome back. Hopefully this time without any missile alarm sirens to cut our conversation short.
That would always be nice, and if there are, they would probably be more Hezbollah from Lebanon than anything else. So first of all, good afternoon to everybody, wherever you are in the world. I'm with my glasses on because I'm both going to be reading and looking at the camera, and so I need my glasses. I may take them off every once in a while. What do I want to do right now? I want to talk about the Israel-Lebanon talks. So I'm going to talk about the talks. I want to talk about the ongoing Israeli operation in southern Lebanon. Take note of my words, ongoing operation in southern Lebanon, which means pretty much from April 9th or even 10th and onward. Today is April 15th, and try and put that into a context as well. And I want to end in my opening remarks just to talk a little bit about both the good and the bad and perhaps the ugly on the challenges that we face. I'm focused at the moment on the Israel-Lebanon arena, but afterwards we can talk about any of those. So it's April 15th. And we woke up this morning, because it happened last night, but we woke up this morning to the beautiful pictures of the Israeli ambassador to the United States, the Lebanese ambassador to the United States, Secretary of State of the United States, and a few other officials. But there are a few things that have to do with the photo op. And as you're all journalists, you understand the impact of a photo op. It was one room. They were standing next to each other. There were Israeli and Lebanese and US flags. That is a photo op that we don't see often. And I say that because when we don't see often, and I saw the BBC had written 1993, I'm actually going to go backwards 40 years, more than 40 years to 1983, Israelis and Lebanese meeting in the same room, talking together about anything is exceptional. Having said that, I want to remind everybody that in 2022, Israel and Lebanon, same Israel, same Lebanon, without a photo op, without the people standing next to each other, actually signed an agreement, which is the Maritime Border Agreement between Israel and Lebanon that was signed at the time. It was called the Economic Maritime Border because at the time it was about the whole aspect of discovering gas off of the seashore under the Mediterranean Sea. So I'm just saying, first of all, the photo op. Both sides, Israel, you can say, of course, but Lebanon agreed to having an open photo op of Israelis and Lebanese and US in the United States with the flags together. The president, Aoun, a Maronite, approved it. The prime minister, and there you have a presidential system. So the president voted separately, and the cabinet is what you call a more, it's a cabinet appointed by the president himself. All of them have been backing these direct talks. Element number one about the talks is that on paper, they're against Lebanese law. Lebanese parliament have a law that they've had for over 15 years in which Lebanese are not allowed to talk to enemy countries. So they've sent off the Lebanese ambassador to the United States, and they haven't changed the law. Just saying, okay? It's like when we talk about laws and the importance of laws, when you want to have direct talks, you can have direct talks. On the front pages of the Lebanese newspapers today. And I'm not talking about Israel. Israel, of course, is all over the place with it, but we'll talk about the differences in a moment. But on the Lebanese newspapers in Arabic, the ones that are talking to them, it says, end of the taboo. And that is making a statement. There has been a very big change in Lebanon. There's a Lebanese president who was the commander of the Lebanese armed forces before he became president, who since becoming president over a year ago in January 2025, has time and time and time again spoken both against Hezbollah and about the possibility of direct relations with the state of Israel. These are important words. The prime minister, who I remind you all was the president of the ICJ, and the ICJ in the sense of somebody exceedingly, how can I put it, anti-Israel at its core, has, as the prime minister of Lebanon, where he came in to be, I call it the technocrat prime minister, but as the Sunni prime minister, President Smirnite, prime minister is Sunni, he has come to the south of Lebanon in the last year and said, Hezbollah cannot bear arms. We cannot have an additional army inside Lebanon. Hezbollah has to disarm, demobilize. He's used all sorts of different terms. He has said it openly. And I'm saying this in my Israeli sarcastic way because it's very important for me, for the journalists, for you to understand how amazing this is in its own way. He has not been killed by Hezbollah. Anybody who would say something like that, president of France, right, sure, president of Lebanon, prime minister of Lebanon, prime minister of Lebanon was blown up into itty bitty little pieces, Hariri, because he was just anti-Hezbollah. It wasn't even, and it's not about being pro-Israel. It's about being pro-Lebanon. Bashir Jumail, 1983, signed as if a peace treaty with Israel when he was president, as if everything on paper over 43 years ago, a very short time period. But you get blown up, you get killed. And inside Lebanon, Joseph Aoun and Nawaf Salam. And I could go down the list of the defense minister, who is Greek Orthodox, and the foreign minister, who is a Maronite, that whole aspect of the different groups that you have there, all of them openly standing and saying, we are against Hezbollah carrying arms. We demand, don't ask, we demand Hezbollah don't carry arms. Give your arms to the Lebanese armed forces. Come be part of us, okay? Let Lebanon be the one that runs Lebanon. And the talks in that sense are the opening of something direct. Will they go anywhere? I don't know. But you need to understand that the actual situation is very exceptional on the Lebanese side, on the Israeli side and the Lebanese side, both of them, in the statements that were made in the aftermath of the meetings yesterday. And here I'm talking about the statements of the ambassadress. Do you say ambassadress? The Lebanese woman ambassador to the United States, the Israeli man ambassador to the United States. But they're both appointees, meaning they come there appointed by the governments in that sense. And Yechiel Leiter, the Israeli one, is most definitely somebody who was appointed by the Prime Minister of Israel because the Prime Minister of Israel trusts him. It's a position that you put somebody that you trust. Over all of the years, you've always had very interesting figures that have been the ones who have gone to Washington to be the Israeli ambassador there. Together with that Lebanese one, they're standing in the photograph next to each other. Again, it's a photo op. You've all been there. You know how everybody moves around inside that room. I've been in that room so many times. You do realize that there's a lot invested in who is standing next to each other. So now you can all write down. They didn't show them shaking hands. And I'm going, you do realize that they showed them standing next to each other? That is making a statement. They weren't the United States and then the Israeli and the United States and then the Lebanese. It's the Lebanese and Israeli standing next to each other. Hezbollah. Hezbollah has two ministers in the government, in the new Nawaf Salam government, meaning when that government came together with the new government in Lebanon in January of 2025, that's over a year ago, Hezbollah that has seats in parliament, and always in that sense, it's a quota of seats. You all know that between the Sunni and the Shiite, and within the Shiite, you have both Hezbollah as a political party, which I call a terror army that has a political party, and Amal. And the Speaker of the House, the Shiite Nabi Berri, is from the party called Amal. And I go back to Hezbollah, because Hezbollah's members of parliament have openly said, we're not going to disarm. Lebanon is being, meaning they, as members of parliament, you can say, wow, opposition, look how you have free speech. And I'm going, listen very carefully. What they're saying is that Hezbollah, the armed terror, the one that I'm showing the fist, that we're not going to accede, we're not going to give that up for the Lebanese. They are Lebanese, these Hezbollah members of parliament, and they are saying, no, the Lebanese armed forces, no, we Hezbollah are the ones that are going to continue to be. Obviously, Naim Qassem, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, has been very clear on that point. He made a big speech the night before the meeting itself, in which he said, we're going to continue. I'm very derogatory towards him, and I shouldn't be. I shouldn't be derogatory to anybody, anytime. But perhaps after being somebody who followed Hassan Nasrallah for 30 years, the sophistication, the interest, it was like you learn so much every single time he opened his mouth and talked. You can read Hassan Nasrallah's speeches for the last 30 years and write a PhD about it or an article. Fascinating. And then you get Naim Qassem. He said the same thing for the last 30 years. Every time he goes to the camera, he's always been in front. And he said the exact same things. We're there as the resistance. We're not giving up. We are Lebanese, but we support our Islamic regime. He couldn't say something clear enough, but at the bottom line was, we're not going to give up our arms. And here I give you, so if I said, the good in that sense, okay, we're not going to give up the arms, is that there were talks. And in the talks, there's no question, Israel walked into the room and said security. Hezbollah has to, this isn't about a game, okay? If they do not disarm, nothing is going to go forward. And in walked the Lebanese, as again, she's the ambassador of Lebanon to the United States, and said very clearly, full sovereignty. You Israelis have to leave Lebanon. And you go, there's no in-between space. And I go, there's lots of space in between. They're focused on their sovereignty. We're focused on our security. And now we have to go and find how the two balances can work together. And it means that in the meantime, because they've started talking, even though we are continuing our attacks against Hezbollah, is that it isn't either or. It's about taking away the terms themselves that everybody's talking about right now are, I wrote it down to make sure that I would write it in the correct terms themselves. Really, Mir? Where did you write that down? Every single time I wrote things down. Blah, 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 blah. Disarm, demobilize, okay? But Israel doesn't say disarm, demobilize. We use different terms in that sense. We talk about deny. I'm going to find it in a moment because there's very specific terms that we use in that sense when it comes about what we demand, okay, in our conditions. There can be no Hezbollah. But when we say there can be no Hezbollah, we're talking about the terror army. And I go, is there a Hezbollah as a political party without the terror army? I don't know. That's a Lebanese problem. Right now, we demand no Hezbollah that has the capabilities that I'm going to describe in a moment and talk about what the IDF is doing, because the Lebanese armed forces cannot do it. Lebanon comes and says, we're Lebanon. We want to, and the terms that everybody's using when it comes to the disarm and demobilize is disarm, demobilize, and DDR, reintegrate. And if I said the good, the bad, and the ugly, okay? Good, look at what I just talked about, okay? Direct talks, etc. Bad, Hezbollah is totally still there, and they are not willing to be disarmed. Does that mean a civil war? I don't think that the Lebanese armed forces is going to try to disarm them by force, which means that Israel is going to continue to attack them. And I'll talk about what we're doing down south. But the ugly is that reintegration, really? Do we, Israel, want to have on our northern border a Lebanese armed forces where Hezbollah has been integrated into the Lebanese armed forces? And I've just given to you, the where we are, because we all want peace tomorrow morning. It's not just, I need to eat the hummus in Beirut. I go up north. Or I want to hope as journalists that some of you, certainly those that are based here, have gone up north. Go to Nahariya, go to Kiryat Shmona, go to Shlomi, go to all of the places where Israelis are living in their homes, and in comes the drone, and in comes the missiles and the rockets, and you're going, why can't you stop that? And I'm saying because to be able to stop it, you have to destroy Hezbollah's terror capability, that arm that they have built, that they built with the Islamic regime, that the Islamic regime of Iran today, with everything going on, still transfers via money laundering, money changers, Turkey that's playing a dirty game, money to Hezbollah. Meaning inside Lebanon that has such challenges, they need to rebuild, not connected to us. They need to have their own economy. I want to remind you all, their autonomy tanked, not connected to Israel at all. They need to rebuild an economy. And who are the people that have an income in Lebanon, which is like the steady income? Hezbollah fighters who get it from the Islamic regime of Iran through different money laundering plans. So they're going to continue to fight. It's not just because they're paid. They're not pay for hire. They're very ideological. And in that, I'm kind of taking that portion and I'll move for a minute and talk a bit about what we're doing. The IDF, it's not a question of misinformation and disinformation. It's just a question of military as opposed to political echelon. So the prime minister was in Lebanon and made a statement from there. The minister of defense goes up. Can I request for a moment for you to ignore, not, okay, the Israeli political statements? And for a moment, I'm just going to focus on the IDF actions, okay? Because the IDF inside southern Lebanon and up until and including April 8th in the Dahya and Beirut and in the Bekaa Valley that are additional strongholds of Hezbollah, okay, is acting against Hezbollah's accumulated terror capabilities. So until November 27th, 2024, which is when Israel with the United States agreed on a ceasefire with Lebanon, not with Hezbollah. We don't negotiate with Hezbollah. That ceasefire is with Lebanon. And what it said in that ceasefire is that Lebanon and the Lebanese armed forces would disarm Hezbollah south of the Litani. Didn't happen. And what the IDF is doing right now is systematically, in a very, I'm going to say systematic, and I'm even going to say the word harsh, and you can write that Miri said harsh, because there's no nice way to do it. They are systematically taking apart the strongholds of Hezbollah that were south of the Litani River. In some of those strongholds, when I say a stronghold, that's a town. It's a village. It's even a city. I would call Binchbel a city. I would call Nabatia a city, but Nabatia is north of the Litani River. So we're not with ground forces there. We are attacking it with artillery. But south of the Litani River, because we attack any place that they are firing drones or rockets at Israel, we attack to the north of the Litani River, but from afar, mainly with artillery. But south of the Litani River, we are systematically taking apart those strongholds. Some of them we already did in September, October, and November of 2024. I would say the ones that are right along the border, because that's where the Radwan forces had their cache of weapons, their arsenals, their bases to be able to come and infiltrate, or as they put it, conquer the Galilee. That's the way they called it. And what the IDF is doing now is further in. If before it was a kilometer or two, at the most 3 from the border, that's what we're talking about in 2024 now. In 2026, we're 5, 6, 7, 8, and in some places 10 kilometers from the border, all south of the Litani River, going into towns that you'd never heard of before, and now you know their names. And when you go into them, it is, I mean, if you look them up online, you'll find that every single town always says if it's Shiite, what it is. All of the towns that we're working in are Shiite. And it says there in the elections, 99.2% of the vote were for Shiites because the vote there goes that way. When you go in, all of the Hezbollah terror fighters are wearing civilian clothes. And we put out the footage, but who cares? It's, Israel fighting. That's what they're with their weapons in civilian clothes. All of the positions that they fired, the rockets, the drones, the ATMs, where they play, everything they do is inside urban civil arenas. And under the urban civilian town, they build an underground subterranean arena. And, I used to stand with some of you journalists on the northern border, and I would tell you, look at that village. Under that village is a subterranean arena. And then to your questions, I would say that in southern Lebanon alone, there are almost 200 Shiite villages like that. one by one by one. And Israel right now is systematically taking apart that infrastructure that's in the sense of the weapons, the arsenals, blowing up the subterranean arenas and killing Hezbollah terrorists and trying, and that's in military terms, isolating the area from Hezbollah being able to come down south, which is why the IDF blew up the bridges on the Litani River. And I think I've spoken enough. So it's that second tier in the last few days. So you have more or less, okay? It's 4 division headquarters that each, 2 of them are active inside Lebanon, 2 of them are more active defense of the north of Israel, that these 4 divisions are actively targeting and inside Lebanon destroying, systematically destroying that infrastructure that Hezbollah built from 2006 and onward. So that's the last 20 years, that's a long time, with Iranian money, Iranian input. Okay. And can I go back to the beginning of what I talked about? Look at how amazing. The Lebanese are saying it's Hezbollah's fault. Hezbollah brought it on themselves. Hezbollah didn't agree to not join the Islamic regime. Hezbollah is fighting. They're not protecting anything. That's what the Lebanese are saying. International media quotes Hezbollah and the Islamic regime a lot. But for a moment, go and look at Lebanese media and how they quote themselves. I think I've spoken more than enough.
I'll let you take a breath. Thank you. That was great. You put out a lot of things, and there are a few things to really pick apart. And obviously, you've done an excellent job of describing, yet again, how Israel is often doing the work on behalf of others, and here specifically helping the Lebanese government out where it can't do what it can to take Hezbollah apart on its own. A couple of questions coming up. One in terms of capabilities, which is always something that arises. Of course, we saw this dramatic attack last week by Israel on, I think, 100 different targets in Beirut. And looking back, even in the last 2 years of what Israel's accomplished on the front, specifically with Hezbollah, what you think is actually left of their arsenal, and in terms of manpower as well, given all of what Israel was able to accomplish on that end. If you have any comments about that before we move on to the next question.
Absolutely. So I want to do this in a descriptive way because we always get the sense that I'm going to start from statistics and then I'm going to talk about what that actually means. So in September, October, November of 2024, the IDF at the time said that they had destroyed pretty much 70% of the arsenal of Hezbollah, and that means 30% was left. And I always used to joke and say that the 30% that was left is twice the amount that Hamas had when Hamas attacked on October 7th, meaning, wow, you did 70%. But what they had was so much that what's left over is still significant. So that's big statistics. What does it mean in day-to-day life? Hezbollah, and that also has to do with the money and with the resupplying, Hezbollah until November 2024, because everything changed after that because of Syria and then because of Lebanon. Until then, they could be resupplied by the Islamic regime of Iran. And that was continuous, where Iran would fill in the missiles, the rockets. The 3 main elements are rockets, which is a lot of what's being fired up north, missiles of 2 different types, which is what fires up north. And if there's an alarm where I live right now, that's going to be okay, it's long range rockets or more exact missiles. There's the ATM, which are the anti-tank type missiles that are more short range and they're much more exact. And those are the ones that have been firing directly into homes and buildings in the north of Israel. So it's the missiles and the rockets and the drones. And we all know the Islamic regime makes them. How do they get from the Islamic regime to Lebanon today in 2026? And I want to say almost categorically, you can always smuggle in. However, in 2026, Hezbollah is not managing to smuggle in missiles or rockets or drones because Lebanon is against it. That makes a difference. They weren't active before. Now, they don't take action, but at least they're vocally against it. because Syria under good old Ahmed Shara, former Al-Qaeda, and who knows what he is today, he detests Hezbollah and the Islamic regime, and they have actively tried to stop any kind of smuggling coming in from Syria. And I want to remind you all that the land border of Lebanon is either smuggle it in from Syria or, like Israel, but that's not going to work. And their last opportunity would be by sea. And so they can't get in the heavy duty weapons. What can they get in? Money. Money transfer can come in a variety of ways. When the foreign minister of Iran comes to visit, you better betcha for the fact that some of those suitcases are carrying cash. By the way, probably dollars, because the Iranian money is not worth anything. Okay, bring in euros, bring in whatever works inside Lebanon. But you don't just need cash nowadays. We all live in this digital world, and the opportunity, the options in that sense. You say wire money. Think of refugees worldwide. Think of migrants worldwide. Think of the fact that, inside Israel, we have tens of thousands of legal residents who come to Israel to work here because they want to send their money home. They want to send their money home to India or to the Philippines or to Sri Lanka. We have lots of wonderful workers inside Israel. How do they send the money? You walk into the post office and you wire it. We're all aware of that. So, what Israel destroyed in the last few months, and we did that also the last time, was the specific Hezbollah direct line. They had their own banks, wire money into the bank. It didn't matter that the banks were outlawed. It's a whole different aspect. We physically destroyed the banks so that you couldn't go in there and pick up money. But you still have, Western Union or whatever that is. And these are things that the international community has to take care of much more strongly. So yes, they still can transfer funds. A lot of that is done in a very indirect way. Turkey is very much a point where a lot of that money goes through. Did I answer the question about what's left of the target? So the targets itself are in the Bekaa Valley. They hold the heavy duty stuff that was underground that we've tried to attack from the air, but you can do up to a point. They have facilities where they were manufacturing rockets inside Lebanon for Hezbollah. And you go, how have you not destroyed that? And I say, don't you love it when Israel goes in and does actions against Lebanon? Can I give you the statistic that you all know? 1 in 5 Lebanese is dislocated. The incredible amount of internally displaced people inside Lebanon, that's up in the Bekaa Valley. So yes, they have those capabilities. We're trying to prevent any of those coming south. And if they fire them from up north, usually what will happen in response, we'll go and try to get to the specific launchers. But those are places that need heavy duty type things, kind of similar to what we did in Iran. And I don't think that we will do them right now because the destruction would be enormous.
All right, Miri, we're actually almost out of time. We do want to get to Iran slightly, but there are two more questions about Lebanon that have come in. So if you can try to keep your answers brief. One is you mentioned the fact that there could, there is a risk of a civil war between different different communities in Lebanon if they're unable to really if we're unable to disarm Hezbollah. And that could lead, I'm just going to read the question exactly as it is. As someone who's worked in global relations, how reliant do you think how reliant do you consider Israel on US and Trump for global support of the war with Lebanon specifically, as a result of the fact that we've just spent the last couple of months fighting also against the Iranians and, the diplomatic clock is ticking?
Okay, so civil war. Civil war is a possibility of all of the countries in the Middle East. Lebanon wants to avoid the civil war. That's because they were in a civil war for over 15 years, meaning they know what that means. And they came together with an agreement and they understand that the Shiites are part of the polity inside Lebanon. The question is about Hezbollah bearing arms and who will disarm. And I say that because I think that the way that Lebanon is going to go about it is exactly what we call the DDR, disarm, demobilize, and then the R is reintegrate. And that's to take Hezbollah and put them into the Lebanese armed forces. And then I go as an Israeli, really? Is that what we want? So that poses a lot of questions, but I do think that in Lebanon, they want to avoid civil war. I think also that the Islamic regime in Iran does not want Lebanon to be in a civil war, that's not good for Hezbollah, because the world would be on against Hezbollah in as a side in the civil war. When it comes to the backing for Israel's actions against Hezbollah, please go back to the photo op. Okay, look at that photo op. That was the United States of America with Israel with Lebanon. That says everything. Okay, it means they're backing the Israelis who are saying security, anti-Hezbollah, Hezbollah is the problem, let's resolve that. And they're backing Lebanon and saying, Lebanon, sovereignty, take responsibility, we're here for you, let's do this. That doesn't make it easier, but I just think that it means that they are both backing Israel and its what they're doing against Hezbollah and Lebanon in their quest for real sovereignty, but that it should be real sovereignty, not reintegrating Hezbollah to be the new Lebanese armed forces that are going to, do actions against Israel.
We're going to leave Iran to another briefing, unfortunately, but because there is one last question that's come in, which I think is really important to address because it talks a little bit about the international community's role. As we know, UNIFIL's mandate is going to be terminated at the end of the year. What are your thoughts on who would fill this vacuum, if at all a vacuum is to be filled? But of course, you talked about this kind of this buffer that exists. Are we going to see a peacekeeping force or some kind of international force there that would be, agreed upon by the various parties?
Israel does not want an international force. Israel does not want UNIFIL. Israel will be very glad when UNIFIL ends it because I've been around for longer than all of you. I want to remind you all, UNIFIL has been there from 1979. I'm sure that many of you were not even born in 1979, and I'm going to be rude and Israeli and said, you know what they've done from 1979 until now? Bupkis, zero, nothing. And as the force grew after 2006, and in 2006, I was in the official position inside the Prime Minister's office, and it was the upgraded UNIFIL. And you know what they did from 2006? Bupkis, nothing. And I say that because I have enormous respect for Spaniards and Irish, for Nepalese and Indonesian, for all the different countries that put their people into the front line. But UNIFIL as a force never did anything against Hezbollah. And I would even add that in the last few months, for the first time ever, they have actively been helping Hezbollah, which was something that for us it was like, really, after 45 years, suddenly you're firing at Israeli drones. What have you done about Hezbollah drones or launchers that are right next to you? So
We've
for
also had
Israel, it
soldiers
doesn't mean no international force, but that's
they
what
were
we're doing.
there,
Yeah.
right? But is there such a force that could be created?
In the
That
future, what usually happens is it morphs, meaning if the agreement between Israel and Lebanon would go forward, and they would say that as part of that agreement, you need a peacekeeping force, then they would probably look and say, okay, let's change the mandate of UNIFIL. But that would be changing the mandate, just like they changed the mandate that's what they did in August of 2006. That was Decision 1701 was changing the mandate of UNIFIL. Israel is very, very, very not happy with UNIFIL. Italians, French, Spaniards, there's so many different countries in there. It's so challenging for Israel, including the British, all sorts of different things that have been backing LAF, the Lebanese Armed Forces also. It's that combo there. So that's going to be part of the negotiation. I don't think that everything is going to go Israel's way. When you sit down at a table and they say both sovereignty but responsibility, and we say security, you can't have that, it's going to mesh together. So yes, I do think that Lebanon absolutely wants an international presence. Let's see if that is an international presence or if it's something more similar to the new international non-presence like being defined in the Gaza Strip. It's hard for me to tell right now because I don't see anybody wanting to join in a new one. They don't like new ones. And I don't see Israel or the United States agreeing to what UNIFIL is right now.
understood. And I know I promised to finish before the Iranian issue. We elaborate on that, but there is a question that needs to be asked in the wider context of things that are happening right now. Do you think there's something that could happen on the larger regional front that could be the game changer in the talks that are more localized with Lebanon?
It's a wonderful question. There's no question to me that if, when the United States and the Islamic regime of Iran arrive at more of a ceasefire, I don't expect it to be more than an agreed aspect of ceasefire, that immediately impacts the Lebanese arena. Because I want to remind everybody what you know. Hezbollah is a proxy of the Islamic regime. The Islamic regime brings Hezbollah into the room. And by the way, they keep saying peace in Lebanon. And I'm like, there would be peace in Lebanon without Hezbollah's terror army, which is a proxy of the Islamic regime. And they continue to supply them and they continue to pay those weapons. So if there was a portion there that would in some way hinder the Islamic regime's capability, not desire, but capability to assist Hezbollah, that would have an impact. I don't expect it to happen. I say sadly. I say sadly because at the end, the United States has its interests. The Islamic regime has its interests. Israel, Lebanon, we've said there are a lot of different actors and stakeholders in this one here. And right now, the focus, and I understand that for the world, is on the Hormuz Strait and to open up the economic shipway that the world needs. And that's a need. And that immediately means that Lebanon has been kind of put outside the room for that one. But look, they're actually talking with Lebanon. That's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Right. The proxy war isn't one of the red lines that we've been hearing coming out of the White House at all.
At all.
At all. Colonel in Reserves Miri Eisen, Senior Fellow at the ICT. Thank you, as always, for your insight.
Thank you all so much, and everybody should have a great day.
You too. Goodbye, everybody.